So what I hate is when we post a new reel
Yeah.
and I send it out to my friends, there'll always be a couple of people who, in a really apologetic, guilty way, message me and be like, "Man, it's a nice reel, but I actually kind of don't agree with the take."
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to agree with every single take I ever give you.
Yeah. Would you prefer it if you said it like without that it's a nice read? If you just say, hey, it's a movie, it's a take. Would you appreciate it more like that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Listen, everyone who's watching this, if movie sends you a reel, tell him you don't like it if you don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Don't be like nice about
And if you like it, blaze.
it. And if you like it, glaze, yeah, for sure.
But then it's also like, there's another class of people who are like, they're gonna tell me all of the critical nuances about a topic that I missed in the 1 minute and 30 seconds that I cut out of a 2 hour video, and I'm like, yeah, buddy, that's the point. It's a reel.
But you know what? I'm really glad that's happening because that means that people are actually thinking and engaging with the thing. I don't want them to agree with me. I don't care whether they do. But if I can get our audience to kind of think, this is very noble of me, but that's not what I'm trying to do. You know what I mean? If you're engaging with it, if you're like, man, these guys are wrong for these reasons. Man, these guys are right, but they missed out on these reasons. Like, I'm glad that you're
No,
thinking that.
fair.
In fact, I want you to write in the comments, man. Tell us, like, I get really happy if somebody's telling me, like, hey, you missed out on all this stuff. Yes, like, I get your point. It's like it's the middle 30. It's not enough to cover everything, but at the same point, it's like, I'm glad I got you to think.
No, I appreciate like the critically engaged comments.
Yeah.
I was coming at it more from the angle of media literacy is really poor in general, and the internet's just worsened it. It's like you need to calibrate your expectations out of what you're gonna get out of a reel, a clip, and
Yeah.
a 2 hour podcast.
Yeah.
You know, like you can give an opposing take to what's being presented to you in a minute 30
Yeah.
without being like, actually, you missed out this one instance in 1965 where the opposite happened. Like, they're kind of different things.
Yeah, I guess so. It's really, really tough to determine the intention, you know what I mean? Some people might just be doing it because they intend to actually kind of like, big dog us, like, hey, I'm smarter than you. But some people might be genuinely like, hey, listen, leave this is a perspective, I don't really. Personally, like, it doesn't make a difference, man. As long as you're engaging, like, I'm happy. You get what I mean? This is what I learned from you. It's like, don't read the comments, bro.
No, you actually, because
Don't read the comments, bro. Yeah.
God. Okay, so
Yeah.
what are we hitting up today, bro?
Today we're hitting up more of what we were talking about last time, which we didn't get to complete because we got into an argument which we were pretty wrong about. And we're pretty tired afterwards, but I think maybe we'll finish it off today.
Well,
And we actually added some new things.
We really
to that,
did, yeah.
And I think this part will actually end up being more interesting than the previous. So what we wanted to talk about today, we want to start off with comparing a few of the more popular art forms, most popular of which we identified as music, cinema, and literature. So what comes to mind first when I ask you to compare these?
man, out of all three, I'd say the one that's held the most meaning to me always has been literature.
Okay.
Right? It's always been books.
Okay.
And as someone who's gotten more into movies recently and begun to really enjoy them,
Yeah.
I still always felt like there was a qualitative difference with literature being the more mature, more sophisticated older brother.
Okay.
And for a while, I was very conservative with that critique because I was like, am I just being a stick in the mud?
Yeah.
Am I just being pretentious about this?
Yeah.
Right? But there's certain things when
You were kind of in this artistic democrat form. It's like, hey, listen, just because I can do it doesn't mean it's better. It should be inclusive. Maybe reading is not that inclusive.
Yeah,
I
I
was
was
an artistic democrat.
I was. And I
Yeah.
was anecdotally and very anti-logically justifying it to myself by looking at that 1% of very deep cinema and seeing that, oh, this also can be as good as film. And that remains
literature.
as good as literature.
Yeah.
And that remains true, right?
Yeah.
But again, that is not the norm.
That is not.
That is not the standard,
Yeah.
right? And I suspected I would find borderline scientific proof
Uh huh.
for my take that reading literature is a much deeper, more complex, more rewarding,
Mm,
and more constructive to you art form than film is.
okay.
And when I really looked down the rabbit hole, I think I found so much more than I expected in
Ah.
favor of my argument.
Okay. Why don't you tell me something?
Matt, so the central idea is that, put simply, film is much more likely to impose emotions and feelings upon you, and literature is much more likely to invite you to think
Yeah.
and incite logic that then results in a certain kind of emotion.
Okay.
So, film then would be monologic.
Because it's a one-sided conversation in a lot of ways. It's not asking you to think. It's asking you to, like, communicate with it on the spot. It's not
It's-
giving you time and the breathing space to kind of think about.
It's expository,
Yeah.
right? It takes a position
Okay.
with the kind of music it directs you with, the kind of lights. It's borderline, if not completely hypnotic.
It's close-ended. It's not open-ended.
So, of course, people are going to say yes. Film can be open-ended. There'll be cliffhangers which have ambiguity.
Yeah.
All of those things are true.
Yeah.
But what's key to this, actually, the differentiation is what you said earlier, that film doesn't give you breathing space,
Yeah.
right? So the tempo,
Unless you're like pausing it like every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you kind of think about it. Which is kind of not fun.
the way the science bears this out is when you see a person on screen crying,
Yeah.
mirror neurons activate in your brain, which, as the name suggests, will impose a certain emotion upon you,
Okay.
right? So you see sadness, you're more likely to feel sadness.
Okay.
You're not feeling sad because you've internalized the logic of what's going on screen,
Yeah.
right? You're feeling sad because of what you're seeing or what the score, what the
What
music,
the environment is kind of creating for you. What it's presenting to you.
low
It's kind
lights,
of close-ended, yeah.
a dramatic, sad music,
Mm-hmm.
right? Someone crying in the corner.
Yeah.
That neurologically does incite a certain form of sadness in you.
Yeah.
And the idea is it's a cheap emotion.
Yeah.
It's an unearned emotion. In psychology, they call it affective empathy.
So what do you think about people who cry in movies?
I think that
It's a very practical example of what you're talking about.
people who cry in movies are having a cheap cry.
They're having cheap.
They
haven't earned that cry.
They haven't earned the cry.
Okay.
Because it's the same as everyone knows that one person on their Instagram who says things like, I just feel things so much more deeply than everyone else does.
Yeah.
And they think they're noble for it.
Yeah.
Like they'll watch like a sad pet video or something like that and they'll start crying. Like they'll watch a reel and they'll start crying.
Yeah.
Right? That's not a positive, constructive kind of release. That's not catharsis.
Yeah.
And that wasn't your dog.
Yeah.
It is, of course, sad that a dog somewhere died.
Yeah.
But if that is moving you to an immediate cry when you haven't had the build up and the inevitability of some sort of conclusion that makes you sad, if you hadn't had a narrative
Yeah.
that takes you towards a point that you have an emotional release,
Mm.
neurologically, that happiness, that sadness is unearned, it's cheaper, and it's more likely to make you sad and make you feel spent and tired as opposed to make you feel like relieved and happy. So
This is what the studies show.
this is what the studies conclusively show.
Okay.
We'll put some of them up on the screen too because
Okay.
argument from authority.
That's very, very interesting because I never looked at it from that angle. I didn't read any scientific literature or something on it. But I intuitively always felt that that monologic, dialogic argue disambiguation you're making. I also kind of felt it when I would watch movies where I would be like, this is a lot. This is making me feel a lot of different ways, mostly in one direction, and there's not that much room for nuance. I don't think the art form lends itself well to seeing a character's thought process or
Exactly.
understanding their motivation, because the best acting in the world is ultimately, it could be Daniel Day-Lewis in his prime, but it's still not going to be as rationally explained, as, well thought out as like a Dostoevsky paragraph about, one of his characters in her monologues. in a
So
lot of ways.
Dostoevsky is actually a great example. I'm glad you gave that because in a lot of literature, he is used as an example
Mm-hmm.
of someone who creates a truly polyphonic
Yeah.
environment. So a polyphonic environment is one in which you can clearly acknowledge the existence of several independent, conflicting minds,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to a movie in which you're immediately told how to feel, whether or not that was the intention of the filmmaker,
Yeah.
right? Uh, in a book, you're much more likely to gradually reason through the scene that is being built up because you're actively building it up in your head,
Yeah.
right? So think of it this way. Uh, and so when you watch a movie,
Mm.
your limbic system gets activated. The auditory and visual centers of your brain get automated, get activated,
Yeah.
right? And the part of your brain that's dedicated to abstract reasoning, which is the prefrontal cortex, it does not activate unless you post the movie, try to reason it out, which is obviously a rare thing. Most people don't do that,
Yeah.
right?
And
So-
it's kind of tough to remember everything.
So the emotion
No,
hits you
nuance.
first,
Yeah.
as opposed to a book. Obviously, there too, an author is trying to create a certain kind of environment and trying to tell you a certain sort of story.
Yeah.
But because the symbols, the language, is something that you use to construct a mental scene gradually, the science fMRIs conclusively show that your prefrontal cortex is active as you read,
Yeah.
right? So you're also feeling things, of course,
Yeah.
but you reason them first,
Yeah.
which gives you a certain kind of ambiguity there. You're free to make moral judgment as you read.
Yeah.
You're much less likely to be able to do that in a scientifically proven manner when you're watching a movie.
That's very, very interesting because the first thing, like, what I was thinking of while you were speaking is, right, when I really think about, like, my favorite characters in a book and I compare them to, like, my favorite characters in a movie, it's a very, very different type of emotion I have for both characters. I can watch something in a movie, I can watch a character in a movie and I can really love them or I can really hate them. And, there's not that much in between. But with a book character, I always feel there's a lot more nuance where it's like I'm loving them and hating them because I'm getting so much more of their internal world building and all these things given to me,
You're in the driver's seat of their mind.
Yeah.
You have their internal monologue as if it's your own,
Yeah.
right? And the idea there is suggested the idea of this being attention without possession, and how that's in art the highest form of love, because you are attentive to a person's inner world,
Mm-hmm.
whoever the protagonist in the story is,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you experience it with them. Ground up, you build that literary fictional world up with them,
Mm-hmm.
right? You experience it firsthand, yet you don't possess it because with literature, because the speed at which you're consuming a book, the relatively slow speed, you're allowed a reflective gap,
Okay.
right? Because you're processing it also logically in real time.
Mm-hmm.
So you're experiencing the life and the inner monologue of another without turning it into your own,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in a kind of maybe cheesy analogy, like how people say that if you love something, you should be able to let it go. Over here too, yes, you are something. You're engaging with emotionally, you're engaging with something, and you're also allowing it to keep distance. You're not trying to dominate it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in film, there's a dominant presence.
Mm-hmm.
The tempo, the music, the camera angles will always nudge you towards a certain kind of emotion.
You certainly have a conclusion as well.
Even if the filmmaker is trying to portray ambiguity,
Yeah.
right? It's not the same thing because any emotion portrayed on screen will hit you before you have time to think about why it's hitting.
What do you think about this thing? Because I haven't read the literature, the scientific literature about this, but they say that men are a lot more visual creatures and women prefer to read. Like in terms like a very very practical example where I've read about this is like in case men prefer to watch, women prefer to read. I mean they have like these smart novels and stuff, and men prefer to watch. Does that have anything to do with like the conversation that we're having right now? Where women maybe they have a better processing system with words than men do.
Look, it definitely has something to do with the conversation. It's just
Yeah.
that you would need to know how differently male and female brains are wired in order to have that conversation. Which is an insight that I have not read into, but it is definitely an angle that
that's an
matters.
interesting thought.
Yeah. Actually, maybe it's because I don't like reading. It is proven makes you more empathetic. Does that come full circle where being more empathetic also makes it more likely for you to read because you're more likely to grasp things from it and like amplifies that aspect of you, and because women are provably higher in trait empathy, that makes it more likely that they're going to read.
I mean, I don't know, but
Maybe.
that sounds very plausible.
That actually
makes sense. You know,
very real time burger philosophy, bro.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Maybe that could be a part.
That makes sense. But yeah, coming back to it, we do think that, you know, literature in a lot of ways is a superior art form to movies in how it kind of presents the logical, the rational, and our ability to really deeply engage itself. You know, that's not to say there aren't absolutely like, you know, slogcore books out there. It's a big problem in I was watching a video about it actually. The problem with like, you know, a lot of the mainstream literature today dominated by like the female millennials who are like, you're kind of obsessed in making everything into a bit of a smart plot show, you know? So it's not to say there aren't problems in literature as well, but I do think that, you know, it does require a lot more nuance. And I think there's also like, you know, conventional wisdom also plays a role in this. When, you know, when we're told as kids, you know, there's no such thing as a book limit. You know, you can read your book 5 hours, 6 hours, your parent won't ever stop you, you know? Your kid has to deal with TV limit. You know, you have a 1 hour TV slot movie. You know what I mean? So there's it used to be called the idiot box at the time, TV.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of this thing as well, where have you forgotten the importance of this conventional wisdom, where it's like, you know, no, this stuff will actually actively like exercise your brain, and this stuff is kind of like, you know, having fast food in a way. And
no,
I
absolutely
like about movies
because, bro, with a book, the kind of effort, the active effort you're making to receive the dopaminergic pleasure from a book is obviously you're working a lot harder for it than you are for the passive reception of pleasure that you get from a movie. So it should be intuitive, but again, like you said, this conventional wisdom, we've kind of forgotten about it. Over time.
I agree with you pretty strongly on that, and I think like, you know, this is not to say that I don't enjoy movies. I do enjoy good. If it's like, you know, the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie that came on, one battle after another. That's a master director. I will watch that movie at some point. You know, if it's a Tarantino, if it's a Christopher Nolan, if it's a David Fincher, I will like tune into it. But for the most part, I find myself tuning out more and more to like, I'm not really interested in what's the new hot show or the new hot movie. Like, and I can back that up. Man, I've in the past, like, you know, 4 or 5 months, I've cancelled basically every subscription I have. Like, I don't have Netflix subscription anymore. I don't have Prime Video. I don't have like any of these over the OTT streaming platforms, you know, anymore. Because kind of like I felt like, you know, I would watch it, I would feel like psyoped in a way, man. I would feel like, you know, a lot of the times I would feel like, man, I don't like this. I don't even like watching this. This is making me uncomfortable. I don't agree with what I'm watching, you know, but I still watch it. I still engage in the entire like dialogue about it, you know, it drawing an emotional reaction of me a lot of the time that I don't even want to be a part of. You know what I mean? So I felt like, you know, man, I just don't want to watch stuff anymore.
What you're saying right now about feeling psyoped, feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So on a social
it's like level, in the middle. It's like in the middle of a movie. It's like it could be a great movie, you know, but there's this absolute need, like, you know, call me a prude, but I don't want to watch nudity all the time. In the middle of a movie, it's like, you know, the movie doesn't need nudity.
When you know it's forced.
When I know it's forced, I mean, this movie is not any better because you put a in it, you know. This is obviously just to draw a reaction, you know. And honestly, maybe I'm a prude about it, but I don't want to watch it. You know, that thing. I just want to watch the movie, man. If I want to watch nudity, there's a lot of other outlets for that. I'm watching the movie. I'm watching the movie because I want to watch the movie. You know what I mean? And I really don't like that personally, you know?
It seems to me almost that when you inject artificially, kind of breaking from the narrative, when you inject a provocative scene, a sexually provocative scene in a movie, it's the cheapest marketing you can possibly do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you wanted to do something that was truly erotic, you would minus that. You would be suggestive. Right? The allure would be in the fact that it's been hinted
The
towards,
mystery,
but not
hinted.
shown.
Yeah, I agree
right?
with you. Absolutely.
That even a lot of classical theory is what erotic is supposed to be,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to this very
Hyper-visual type of. Yeah.
material.
Yeah.
It is not the same thing,
Yeah.
right?
And even the women are right about this stuff. Wow.
Yeah.
I think they are. Yeah.
And, you know, on a social level,
Yeah.
when you look at about how a lot of the media being pushed upon you is not stuff you're comfortable with, then it comes to like, man, I've always had this instinct where because I'm into art,
Yeah.
right? I've never wanted to be censorious about it,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I've had this instinct where, you know, uh, at least from a self-regulation point of view, uh, or if I'm talking to someone younger than me and advising them,
Yeah.
I would somehow be very comfortable with them reading mature content,
Yeah.
but not watching it. And I've always wondered why,
Mhm.
right? I've always felt as if I intuitively know the reason, but I can't articulate it.
Yeah.
And when I looked into the neurological stuff, which is what we've been talking about all along, is that when you're reading, you're reasoning,
Yeah.
right? You have the ability as you read something to judge, not surrender your moral judgment and see,
It works with your style, and I can pause it at any given time. I put a bookmark, I pause it, you know?
and your prefrontal cortex, as I said, your abstract reasoning is active. So
Yeah.
when you're even reading something that you disagree with, you know as you read it that you disagree with it.
Yeah.
As opposed to in movies, when the emotion is pushed onto you first, and even later you might parse through it and say that, I didn't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah.
But with enough bludgeoning, with enough propagandizing over decades, it's much more likely that before you know it, you start becoming a little softer on things you never wanted to be soft.
Yeah. Idiot books for real, huh?
100%. Okay, we've been just battering film.
Yeah.
Something I know I love,
Yeah.
and I know that you've been into film in the
Yeah,
past
yeah.
as well.
I have been into
So, what's the approach? What do we do about this pressing problem?
Okay, first, I mean, it really depends on the person. Obviously, like, are you in the same boat as me where, you were at some point somebody who really loves film, but like you just can't stomach watching most of this stuff anymore? Or are you, if you're in the position that I'm in, I think the best way to actually like kind of rebel against this is not to like, sit and have arguments with people about it. I don't think it's by, trying to watch stuff that makes you more comfortable. I think the best way to do it is like, do just switch it off, disconnect, unsubscribe, like, apathy. I really think apathy is the best approach with a lot of this stuff because it's like, man, engaging with this on any level isn't making me happy. So I think apathy is the best thing in a lot of cases. It's very, very tough to curate where even if I'm a normal person, it's like I want to check the best top 10 best movies of 2025 list. I want to check the Oscar nomination. Maybe they're serious, You watch one of those and then bam, they hit you with something and it's like, come on, man. Like, have you seen the movie Conclave?
I haven't. Oh, the Popes.
Bro,
Yeah.
brilliant movie. For like an hour, for like 2 hours, I'm like, man, this is so fascinating. I didn't realize that a movie about electing the next pope could be so interesting, Brilliant acting, brilliant, like everything. You really understand, like, they give you a sneak peek of, church politics, religious politics. Really well done. And then at the end, like, the guy they finally elect, turns out in the last 5 minutes of the movie, they reveal that he's a trans man. And I'm like, man, come on, not the time and place. We're talking about an Abrahamic religion that's, 2,000 something year old. Like, is this really the right time and place to push an agenda? And the sad thing is that it was it was a genuinely brilliant movie. You know what I mean? I was watching it the entire time, and my takeaway was, wow, I haven't seen a movie like this in a long time. And at the end, I felt like, I was insulted. I'm like, I can't believe I sat through 2.5 hours of this just for you guys to conclude that
The Pope is
this secret trans pope that only one cardinal knew about was somehow the right choice, and they hid it from everyone. It was insulting, man. And then I realized, bro, like that movie was really the last one. I'm like, bro, unsubscribe from everything. I'm not watching anything anymore. You know what I mean? I do not. I'm done with this entirely. You know what I mean?
You actually came across that much outcry about this from Western quarters, what I expect to hear. Or maybe I just wasn't tuned in, but
This was a like it was a peak like Oscar bait movie where it's like 100 million budget, that box office is 20 million. It was meant to be like I don't know, those are the actual numbers, but it was meant to be kind of this like loss making movie that nobody really watches, and it's only for like the snobs. So maybe that's why there wasn't that much conversation about.
How does a country with so much emphasis
Yeah.
in public life, at least by a certain section of society, about religion, like the US, how do you get away with making something so insulting about the worldwide leader of Catholicism,
Yeah.
and you just get away with it? It's mainstream and it's getting awards and nominations.
It's mind boggling.
So my approach, that is one approach.
Yeah.
I think this.
And just to clarify, I'm not like an actively like anti-trans that person. I'm really not. You know me well enough. I'm quite socially liberal in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? I don't have any agenda against anyone, but I just felt like, bro, this is so obviously like, you just trying to sigh off us. Like, come on, man. You serious. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Tuning out is one way.
Yeah.
I also think that because, and this is where it gets dicey and a bit fash, right? But I do think when something is so emotionally powerful, whether it's film or for that matter, but probably the most powerful and unobstructed art form, which is music,
Yeah.
right? You then either you look at that awe-inspiring, heartstring manipulating power and you run away from it,
Yeah.
right? Which is not a cowardly thing, maybe it's a wise thing.
Mm.
Or you use it for positive purposes,
Mm-hmm.
right? If right now film is propagandizing young people for the worst,
Yeah.
maybe you should use it for the better. And yes, I know now everyone's going to say that who's going to decide what's good, who's going to decide what's bad. But I mean, you get my
These times if categorical imperative to decide.
no thanks. I'm going to listen to my parents, but you get my point, right?
Yeah.
So it can be used as a vehicle for good.
Yeah.
Another thing is, what you can at the very least do, as someone who says, you know what, I'm not skitzed out, I'm not a proper fringeoid, schizoid like Arbaaz and Muhammad.
Yeah.
Okay? What you can at least do, if you're a progressive, liberal, democratic kind of person,
Mm-hmm.
right? You acknowledge the power of and the depth of art,
Yeah.
right? In that case, at least treat it with due respect
Mm-hmm.
and say, my consumption of art will now, one, be curated,
Yeah.
two, it'll be almost ritualistic.
Yeah.
In the sense, I dedicate time to consuming the art form and then time to pause through and think about it.
Yeah.
Think about what I saw,
Okay.
right? So that for me is the next step,
Yeah.
right? And if you're someone who's serious about art and you award value to the subject-object relationship,
Mm-hmm.
you don't want the narrative of another driven through music or the tempo of a story to hijack your mind and tell you how to feel about a situation,
Yeah.
right? So you either after you watch a movie or listen to a great album, you really take the time to think through it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't let that narrative be imposed upon you,
Okay.
right? Because
I think-
narrative,
Yeah.
and this is kind of the crux of what I've been trying to get at. Narrative allows for meaning making in your life,
Yeah.
right? Higher order meaning making.
Uh-huh.
And literature allows you to do that in a much more powerful way than movies or film,
Yeah.
right? And at the center of that is the idea of the theory of mind, right?
Yeah.
The basic consciousness that even a child develops at the age of like 2 or 3, that independent minds exist apart from me,
Mm-hmm.
that reason separately from me, that do not, it's the antithesis of this modern narcissistic, I'm the main character,
Yeah.
right? That you're just one node in a very large world of human beings.
Yeah.
And it has been proven scientifically that when you wake up in another person's body, experience everything that they do day in, day out in the long hand of a book, that develops and rehearses your theory of mind, your ability to empathize with another person.
Yeah.
Right? And that's just something film and music will never be the same way. Because music, for example, right? When you hear a sad piece of music, there's no build up, nothing's happened in your life. Your reality has not been altered, right? something has literally biochemically convinced you to be sad in the moment.
Yeah.
Unearned sadness.
Yeah.
Right? All of this to say that you need to be guarded in how you consume things.
Yeah.
Right? And finally, if you're acknowledging that you need this cognitive firepower, this cognitive bandwidth in order to consume responsibly, it brings up the very elitist, very off putting prospect that maybe complex art or narrative driven art will not benefit it.
I agree with you on the first principle basis, but I think putting any type of here's why I think running away. Like I get everything you're saying and I'll address it in a second. But here's why I think running away actually is probably the best bet.
Right.
So in the 80s and the 90s, right? They invented like rated R music, PG-13 music, PG-13 films, rated R films. But they didn't stop anybody from watching anything more. In fact, the conversation about how, inflammatory and controversial those things were only increased the eye. So from even engaging with it and saying, oh, this is bad, we don't want this, let's give a positive thing, it only serves the purpose of putting wind on the flame in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? If you see in like the headline that, oh, this thing is so controversial, you're interested. You want to read about it. You want to know why is it so. And maybe when you read it, you're like, hey, you know what? This is kind of cool. That's a natural human reaction. We're all humans. You know what I mean? So while I would love to have a way we can regulate this, it's just not how human nature works, in my opinion. The more you taboo something, the more people are going to want to go to it. I really think on a lot of levels, the only way you can actively rebel and say, I don't want this in my life, I don't want anything to do with this, is by apathy. Do not engage.
Hermit maxing?
Hermit maxing. I think that's the right approach. If you really have a problem with it. Look, and my life is better for me doing that. Like, for the past few months, when I've said that I'm not going to watch stuff anymore, bro, I like it, man. It's much more peaceful. I'm glad not being in the mood of every stupid pop culture conversation and every stupid like new trend that it's just like mistake. I'm glad I don't have to deal with that shit anymore.
So art forms that are more actively interpretive,
Yeah.
like say painting, literature,
Yeah.
all of these things that offer a greater deal of subjectivity
Yeah.
and ambiguity that allow you to enter them and then decipher them, right? In real time.
Yeah.
Those are still there in your version of the ideal reality to enrich your life.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not like you're cancelling art out of the...
Absolutely not. I mean, the music, I don't agree with you entirely about characterizing music like this. I listen to a lot of music. I read, you can ask my wife about this. I read maybe, 3 hours a day, like, just like before going to bed in my free time, I'm just reading. I used to play video games, I don't really play that anymore. It's not that I'm not consuming art anymore. I still am. I'm still consuming a lot of literature. I'm listening to a lot of music. I'm listening to a lot of new music and stuff. And I'm reading things that oppose my viewpoints. It's not that I'm not, but I just mean it more in the sense of like my problem is mostly with the video format. Like I'm very, very specific. My problem is the video format, and it's unreal ability to propagandize people, and create, cognitive dissonance and contradiction to the people. I think it's something inherent to that particular art form, and I have a problem with that art form. It would be very, very specific with what I'm saying.
The problem therein, to me, is the power, the raw power that a film has to influence your mind. The foremost component of that is also its music. It's also the lighting. The hypnotic effect is this entire sensory package that you're bombarded with from the second you enter the cinema.
Yeah.
Right? But music's a big part of that.
Yeah.
And in fact, the least filtered, the most real-time art form in that sense is music.
Yeah.
Right? So again, my argument for neither is that you should not listen to music or that you should not consume film.
Yeah.
It's that you alter / filter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So even with music in its awe-inspiring power to move,
yeah,
you can't avoid rhythm.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
How do you harness it for the better? And if that applies to music, why doesn't that also apply to film?
Man, I'll tell you why.
Or for you, is it more of a personal thing where
There's a personal element to it, but I obviously I'm justifying the personal element with something. So I do my reading, but I don't apply this to music as much. Okay, so music, rhythm, and stuff. It is still. I disagree with you when you say that it's close-ended. It's not close-ended. I think it's very open-ended. You can listen to something and still feel like, this is kind of happy, and I can listen to it and be like, this is kind of sad. There is ambiguity involved in just a melody, And I also think that when you talk about music, you're talking about an art form that probably predates everything. There's a lot of historical precedents of how music is made. It has been used for constructive purposes.
music has been around for as long as people have been around. Like, which is why you just
if you had like a legion heading to war, there was war music. If you went to church, they still engage with music on that level. There's a very very unifying aspect of music as well. There are a lot of very very strong pros.
The alternative interpretation of what you just said would be music throughout since the dawn of time has been used to whip up people into warring and religious frenzies.
No, I don't think so. Absolutely not. I think music throughout the dawn of time has been used in a lot of ways to help people create vibes in a lot of ways.
Fair, yeah, that's
vibes.
Right.
I don't think music is the problem here.
No, I'm not saying music is the problem.
And I'll tell you why it's not the problem here. There's also historical precedence to it. In the sense that there weren't any there's never been a propagandizing music industry. There has been, maybe today, yeah, we can argue it, but what did the Nazis use to get their people ready for war? It wasn't music. Of course, they liked Richard Wagner. Richard Wagner influenced their ideas, but they didn't send Richard Wagner to the masses to be like, hey, guys, we're ready to war. Listen to Rise of the Valkyrie. It was put into a film. It's the same thing in the American film industry during the World Wars and stuff like that. The film was the particular art form chosen to propagandize the masses. But music has a mass element to it. I'm not saying it doesn't, but there's still a lot of
music is
there's a historical precedence to music.
Music is and always has been deeply linked to influencing people. So
Absolutely.
Whether it's through it's linked to psychedelics, for example.
Yeah.
Or the Sufis you see in Mazars who go into trances.
Yeah.
Through substances, yes, but also chiefly through music.
Yeah.
Right? So that's always been an element of losing yourself in the beat.
Yeah.
Right? So obviously it's incredibly powerful.
But then
right?
my
argument. So I think we both agree on, in that sense, music is the most raw and powerful art form.
Absolutely. But see, music is not trying to be logical. Music is not trying to create a rationalized worldview. Music is trying to explicitly tap into your emotions. It's very, very Dionysian in essence. It's not trying to convince you that this is the logically well thought out way. The same way literature is not trying to emotionally convince you that this is the deepest, most emotional thing in the world. They have their arenas where they're explicitly operating in. I don't think music can propagandize people that much, man. There's a limit to it. Cinema is the bastardized art form that is trying to use emotions to tell you that this is a rational thing. I think that there's a difference.
So I think I disagree with both points actually. So one, as a criticism, I'll say it's the peak of unearned emotion. So, for example, if you listen to a hype song,
I don't think it's unearned emotion. I think it's emotional resonance in a lot of ways.
That's the same thing with film.
I don't think that's the same thing with
But
film.
neurologically, it is the same process.
I don't know about the neurological process in this. I can't claim to you can go to appeal to the scientific authority, but I can't engage in the conversation.
See, no, fair.
I can engage in the intuitive conversation.
Look at it this way. The intuitive conversation, which we both agreed on about film, is that it hits you with a certain kind of emotion. Your argument,
but it's not just, it's a logic, it's a rationalization of an emotion that may or may not be applicable. So music is not trying to rationalize. Music never tries to rationalize the frenzy. Cinema does try to do that. Literature does not try to frenzy the rational.
Do all great political movements not have anthems associated with them?
Absolutely.
Why?
to hype people up. But it's an explicitly emotional
But
thing.
it fits. But that song,
Yeah.
that music, that rhythm, is so explicitly, deeply ingrained with
The most
X, Y, Z
political
philosophy.
movements also have explicit manifestos, which are literature as well, you know?
But
They do as well,
no,
don't they?
you get my point.
I do get your point.
But we have to engage with the reality. Like you're saying that music is not used for propaganda. It's one of the chief tools of propaganda. And just let me finish, bro. And you're saying, oh, it's not trying to appeal to certain moral truth. Music, when firstly accompanied by lyrics in a political program, is obviously trying to point you towards certain political truth. But say, even if it's just a beat, even if it's just a raw anthem that fits into the logic or the popularization of a certain popular movement, there's a reason music is being used for that. And again, even in film, and I won't get into the science of it, but even intuitively, of course, when you're building a certain scenario up, you're using music to do that, right? And now look, it's not even just about music preaching a certain universal truth. Yes, I'll acknowledge a qualitative difference, which I don't disagree with, by the way. But songs with lyrics do, even raw music necessarily doesn't preach to you the same way that a film does, right? But my contention would be that it still gives you unearned emotion. You would say emotional resonance. Yes, that is defined as affective empathy, right? A sad thing is presented before you or done to you, and you respond with sadness. That's the idea of mirror neurons. So
Yes.
music operates along that same logic.
But music, here's the thing, bro, if you're feeling happy, right, you won't with a sad song. It's very, very simple. It's sensory steroid. It's not changing your state of mind. It might enhance your state of mind. It doesn't change your state. Bro, when you're in a happy mood, you're about to go out to a party and stuff, I could play the saddest, most beautiful song. You're not going to get sad. You're going to be like, hey, listen, man, I'm in the mood to party. This isn't doing it for me right now. Hey, give me something that resonates with what I want right now. That's
I mean, on a personal level, I don't agree with that. I don't think so at all. And
I do think so intuitively. Like, bro, if you're at a party and somebody starts playing, like, you know, the saddest Adele song, everybody like, you turn that shit off. You know what I mean? They will do that.
Of course, but at the same time, like, if someone's feeling lazy, for instance, right? And they will play like Lose Yourself by Eminem to hype themselves up for the gym, right?
Yeah.
If someone's chilling and they want to get in their feels, they'll play a sad song. So that's obviously also a thing. You can make the relatively niche argument to say,
whoever sits and says, hey man, you know what, I feel like I'm happy, I'm in a pretty nice place, I want to get in my feet.
bro, plenty of freaks, bro. Trust
I don't know
me.
who does that,
bro,
man. I get it, like,
that.
if I'm in my fields and I'm like, hey man, I'm in my fields, can I have some emotional closure? I play a sad song,
Do you not see
But if you're feeling lazy and you're like, you know what, let me listen to some hype stuff, let me listen to some Eminem to get myself in the good. That's literally the textbook example of art being used in the right way, according to us. It's like, let me right or wrong. You know what I mean? That's the best. That's the best way of using it. You know what I mean?
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying the effect is there, though. Of course,
the effect is there,
and
but it's
there's
most,
a direct, there's a legion, there's a generation of people who glamorize their own sadness.
Yeah.
These people do literally sit around and play sad shit, watch sad shit, and wallow in their sadness.
Yeah.
So, of course, there's something inside you that resonates, but that goes without saying. That's why it works.
Yeah.
Right? But, of course, music is a mind-altering substance.
Yeah.
It has good applications.
Yeah.
It has bad applications.
Yeah.
Right?
But I know, I agree with you there. I just don't think it's fair to put it in the same tier as movies, man.
I put it in the same tier. I put it as in that way, in the sense of it being unearned. I put it in a deeper well than that.
Maybe it's in that, but in its ability to do good, in its ability to actively make your life better, I think like you could argue it's even higher than literature, man. You really could. A gym, like, you know, a typical chud, like, you maybe 90 IQ who listens to hype music and just wants to get shit done, is gonna beat out the literature nerd every day of the week, bro. You know that to be as true as I do. You know what I mean? So that's a very extreme
I don't necessarily.
That's a very extreme example, and I do think at its worst impulses, it can be the most intoxicating. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm thinking there's still a lot of capacity for music to do good and to really help us. You know what I mean? It's like when you're super sad and you listen to a sad song, maybe you have a cry about it because of actual things that happen. You're like, you will feel better, man. Like, you know.
What really confuses me about music, also from what I've been reading about psychedelics, and I would say I'm very undecided about this, right? You know, a lot of cultures have a negative view of music because of its intoxicating qualities.
Yeah.
And almost all cultures do of drugs and psychedelics because of the same logic.
Yeah.
Right? But you do see a lot of people actively benefit from music, whether it's a gym bro listening Lose Yourself at the gym, or it's someone who's into Sufi music and he reforms his life and he finds God through that.
Yeah.
Right? I've had a really close friend of mine who was an atheist, and then he did like acid and he started believing in God. I'm by no means advocating that as a path towards spiritual enlightenment, not at all.
Yeah.
Right? But it just goes to show that there is, as of yet, uncharted territory there. Like, I just don't know what to mean.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay to say we don't know because we really don't. We're just writing based upon our vibes, you know? As much as I love literature and I really think that it's the one thing that I wish people would read more, there's a huge propagandizing effect of literature as well, man, and we can't take that away. You know? It is there. You have to choose what you read, like you have to choose what you watch, or you have to choose what you listen to.
So there is a difference.
It's like, you know, the deepest form of propaganda, like I could argue, the most impenetrable one could arguably be literature. Like, you know, communism, we know it's a bad idea, it doesn't work anywhere else in the world, you know? But some asshole read Communist Manifesto and absolutely convinced. And he could be a smart person otherwise, you know what I mean? How many university professors and actually intelligent people buy into this stuff, you know? I don't agree with the notion that they're stupid. Absolutely not. On pure IQ left turns, these people are probably sitting at 120, 130 IQ, so obviously smart people. But they're convinced that this is the right thing because of how much of the propagandizing effect of literature can have. But you know, for really smart people, reading the wrong thing is more of a danger than watching them.
So, you know, there's music in its raw archetypal form.
Yeah.
Then there's the actual stuff that's popular today that most of us are listening to.
Yeah.
That cannot be spiritually healthy.
Why?
Because at some level, when you're at least I'm listening to rap music, right?
Yeah.
Trap music.
Yeah. I listen to a lot of rock.
Heavy satanic imagery.
Occult, yeah.
Very occult.
Yeah.
Overtly occult.
Yeah.
And on my end of things, there's that too, and then there's also everything is sex,
Gangbanging.
drugs, violence, gangbanging, all of that, right?
Yeah.
And I would love to think that, oh, this is just a little moral holiday I take in my mind for an hour a day, and it has no effect on me. But it is extremely arrogant to think after years of listening to similar content day in, day out, it has no effect on.
Absolutely, it does. But I think, you know, you're a pretty well settled individual. And I think I'm also a decently well settled individual. And we've listened to some pretty extreme shit. You listen to Satanic Pre-Workout. I mean, I grew up exclusively listening to rock, Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath, look at that name, you know? It turned out pretty okay, you know what I mean? So can we not be the bulwark against, like, hey man, you can listen to some really out there stuff, it can still be okay. You don't have to be a Satanist just because you listen to satanic music.
Look, I agree, and I think, look, if you, as a person, you've got a baseline,
Yeah.
right? Like, sitting here as a defense burger, how far can, like, 21 Savage influence me to become a gangbanger? Like, how far can he really take me, right?
Yeah.
How far can he make me deviate from my baseline?
Yeah.
But,
But how far can being a film bro deviate a defense burger into becoming a total sad bro?
pretty far.
You know, like,
Pretty far.
that's film, yeah.
Yeah.
That's film. Music won't get you that far.
But you know, with music, I feel like your context matters. How far will it deviate you from your baseline?
Mm-hmm.
But I also maybe haven't self-diagnosed as deeply as I could. Like, looking back, there are definitely some traces of this content I've consumed in my personality over the years. Right? You know, maybe I wouldn't swear as much. Maybe I wouldn't say particular words that are now a staid part of my lingo that all came from that culture.
But how much of it do you think that is the art having influence on you, or how much of it is, you know, the art just bringing out your inner instincts, man? Like, you know, maybe you are an angry-ish person that likes to swear, and, you know, this kind of just normalized it for you. You know what I mean?
Still a bad thing.
It is a good thing or a bad thing. There's an argument that it's a bad thing, but I don't think that's necessarily on the art. You know, if it just made you into more of who you already are, you can't blame the art, really. You don't know.
Everyone has.
Like, you know, I know who I am. There's certain tendencies that I know I do not have. Like, you know, no matter how much music about drugs I listen to, I've never done drugs in my life. I'm never going to start doing drugs in my life. I enjoy music made by absolute heroin addicts like Kurt Cobain and Alice in Chains. I love their stuff. I swear by it. This thing about drugs, but I'm not into drugs. I don't do drugs. You know what I mean? So how much of it is really like bringing out your own instincts, and how much of it is, hey, it's gonna psyop me?
Look, if I look at how I live my life, I definitely don't think anyone could look at me and say I'm into rap. No one assumes that about me.
Yeah.
Right? But on a purely principle level, just because I have something that's a part of my personality,
Yeah.
but if it's a negative thing,
Yeah.
why would I engage with an art form that worsens that? Yeah, sure, it's a part of me, but if it's a bad thing, if I've judged it to be a bad thing, why would I engage with something that enlarges it?
Because honestly, when you really do this deep Jungian self-diagnosis thing, what you will find is that your worst instincts, your worst characteristics are really a different side of the coin to your best instincts, man. Like, you know, you can't, like, if I'm an angry person, I'm probably a pretty intense person. Intensity can be channeled in a lot of really, really good ways. You know what I mean? So the thing that you're describing as negative traits about yourself, in a lot of ways, they're probably your best traits as well.
No, sure, but then
Those are your excesses.
You sharpen the positive aspects and you blunt the negative aspects.
Yes, but that's not on the art form, is it? That's your ability to channel it. Like, you know, I have a natural intensity to me. I listen to intense music, you know. I listen to intense music when I'm tired, when I need to go to the gym, when I need to, like, you know, get ready for some serious work. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean I listen to it and go pick fight with everyone, but maybe I listen to it to try to help me do the things.
You don't think music seeps into your mind unconsciously over time?
No, absolutely it does, but I'm saying that...
then it's not always a choice.
No, it is a choice. I'm letting it seep into my mind because it's kind of giving me sensory steroids to be better at the thing I'm already... It's sensory steroids. It's the same way a bodybuilder is going to take steroids, he's going to take D-balls to get bigger arms. I'm going to take music to make myself more intense because I channel that intensity through the right things in my life that make me happy. I think
no disagreement, but I'm saying, like you said, there will be music that will amplify good things about me. And there'll be music that'll amplify bad things about me. And of course, it's not always that simple, right? It may amplify the unifying trait of intensity, which amplifies both things, right? But there is always going to be music that amplifies objectively bad things. So, for example, if someone's favorite artist is The Weeknd, and for the past like 12 years, since like Kiss Land, they've been listening to it every single day. Their unconscious mind has collected the debris of The Weeknd talking about infidelity, talking about fornication, talking about a very lax attitude towards some very unhealthy habits. Right? Now, just because I just because it didn't get to me, just because it didn't get to you, right, doesn't mean it didn't seek into #young, the collective unconscious. Right? So that is more my point. There are things, so that's where the self-regulation comes in, right? Just the same way you don't want to watch certain movies, there will be certain music, man, I love The Weeknd, right? I'm not even saying I'm going to stop listening to The Weeknd or that I have stopped listening to The Weeknd. But to not be mindful of the fact that maybe you haven't even noticed and he's chipped away in a negative way at certain things inside you,
Yeah.
right? To be conscious of that is of the utmost importance.
I agree with you there. You know, my retort to that is that, man, I'm happily married. I've been in a relationship for 4 going on to 5 years, and Weeknd is probably my favorite artist of the contemporary. I've been a Weeknd fanboy.
Oh no!
Yeah,
Oh, no.
I've been a Weeknd fanboy since maybe 2012. You know,
Yeah,
I think
same
he's
here.
the best. You know what I mean? And yeah,
Generational talent.
absolutely. That being said, I do think I listened to him more like when I was still like, you know, single. Definitely. But now I still think that Young is a great artist, and that you have to self-regulate at the end of it.
And okay, there's a
You need to be
point.
like, man, I'm listening to this stuff, but you know that's not me. I listen to some drug music, but I don't do drugs. Like, you know, you can kind of appreciate.
But like, there's a point of raciness. There's a point where it gets so risque that, like, Orna, for example. Like, there's a point that
Wow.
you know
the first song of his I ever heard, man.
No way. Okay, so like, okay, that is just a boundary. Then there's just, is that not objectively bad? Do I need to really give an emotional, logical exposition for why or nah is not a good thing to consume?
No, absolutely, it's bad. It's objectively a bad thing, morally, ethically bad thing. The same way smut novels are bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not gonna argue against it.
Yeah.
It's just on you to be like, hey, listen, man, just be a smart person about this. Don't get too far with this. You know, don't take it too far. You know what I mean? And that's the beauty of both literature and music, where you really can, like, you know, read the most out there stuff or listen to the most weird stuff and kind of be like, bro, I'm just LARPing. I'm not really about this life. This is just interesting. You know what I mean? I don't think I don't think film affords the same. I'm gonna come back to you because I have a bone to pick with it. I don't think film affords a lot of people that same nuance. You know, it will propagandize you in that moment. It's too powerful.
Well, I think you're coming at this from a position of privilege. From when you're a well-regulated person who's managed to regulate the consumption of art and who hasn't been thrown into the deep end by it. So, for example, do all of us not know that group of people we knew in high school who got like really into drugs, and when they got into weed, the music they listened to was a large part of it. Again, I'm not demonizing him generally.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there's a reason it gets embedded in certain subcultures
Yeah, I agree.
and, you know, and furthers them,
Yeah.
or a political movement or anything like that. You know, it's the ultimate amplifier. Like you said, steroids
Yeah.
for everything.
Yeah, music is. I agree
Right?
with you. I agree. I'm not debating that.
So that power is
The only way to fight that
hard
power,
to harness.
and coming back to it, I think the only way you can fight against that power is not to make a national debate about it. It's just, I'm not going to engage. Because debating about it, bringing more information to it, is just going to attract more people. There's a lot
But
of
see,
days,
look,
man.
the point is, though, that no matter what you do,
Yeah,
people will always consume music
yeah,
and people will always consume movies,
yeah,
right? And from a first person perspective, the hermit maxing, run away from it, apathy, disengage is a viable solution. On a social level, that's not a viable solution. Because for me, on a
it works so fucking brilliantly, man. If everyone just said, you know what, we're not going to watch, we're not consuming this stuff anymore, we're done with this stuff.
that's not practical.
Huh?
That's not practical.
It's not practical. A lot of things are not practical. Communist Manifesto isn't practical, but it's a cool idea. It's a cool idea.
No, but for the reason I say that is not just to,
Materialism is not practical.
I'm not trying to poke a hole in what you're saying. What I'm
No, I
trying
don't
to
think
say,
you are.
Yeah.
We're just we're having a very platonic conversation.
Yeah.
We're talking about the ideal form of
Yeah.
this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do understand that my apathy argument is very, very
No,
individualized.
the
You
reason
know how my brain works in a way. I'm like, hey, listen, man, we can't as a group kind of do anything. How about one person does something?
And this is a lasting parallel, I think, between how we generally argue things. That
Yeah.
you do take the individual first. I won't say detached argument, but you take the individual first.
Yeah,
argument,
yeah. I'm
right?
very, very.
And I don't disagree
I'm very
with that.
solipsistic in a lot of ways. I do have
Yeah.
main character syndrome in some ways, I guess.
No, but I think that it's not even solipsism, because there's, you know, I think you're knocking yourself. Like
Yeah.
your argument is individual first and then movement to the mass, right?
Yeah.
But from a top-down perspective, from a regulatory perspective,
Yeah.
you know, I hate talking about art that way, but that's kind of what it
Yeah.
is. You know, what strikes me as important is replacing the bad with the good, because the medium will always
We need
exist.
new good art
Right?
form.
We
you
need,
know,
we
art
need
form.
good movies with good messages, and yes, I do think that's objectively determinable. I'm so sorry I have a moral framework. I apologize.
Yeah, I agree
Right?
with you.
You know, and then the same thing with music.
You
right?
think Batman is an ethically good movie? I think it's an ethically good movie. I
Yes,
think it is. It's
yes.
a man of extreme privilege and power who uses his power for good.
Almost certainly.
I think Batman is actually. There's a reason why all the guys like love Batman. Like my wife asked me upon the time, why do all you guys love Batman? They go, you won't get it, bro. Batman is
So inspiring.
Is the coolest fucking guy ever, man.
And you know, the sure, maybe someone has some, you know, religious conservative issue with some particular scene somewhere. That's another story, right?
Yeah,
On a narrative level,
yeah,
on an archetypal level,
yeah.
right? Is their positive output, is consuming the Batman a net positive for a consumer? Absolutely.
Well, if every guy in the world watched Batman, right, we would stop having injustices. And if he took it too hard, maybe injustice would stop.
Jungian hero arc.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Kurt Vonnegut's charts?
No.
Where he basically makes graphs for.
Which books did Kurt Vonnegut write?
Bro, he wrote
That one really
the
famous.
Cat's Cradle, Breakfast of Champions, Slaughterhouse 5.
Uh-huh.
Bunch of these. Those are I've read one more.
There was one more I think I read when I was young. I'm forgetting.
Fucking made my late teens amazing. But
Yeah.
he made these graphs, right? So he took archetypal stories. So whether it's your hero arc, or, I mean, I read this years ago, so I don't remember which specific ones he took. But if he made a graph where it's like, okay, starts out good, tragedy in the second arc,
Come back.
third act, come back, right?
Yeah.
So he literally made graphs out of it.
Yeah.
So in that sense, Batman is an incredible story.
Yeah.
And it is 100% a net positive.
Yeah. Okay, glad we agreed on that. Batman is the GOAT. Perfect. So
Dude,
moving-
all of these things, you know, we've talked about even earlier when we were talking about fitness and like Goku. The One Piece, all of these things are net positive stories.
Yeah.
You might have certain cultural
Don't get me
guards.
started on One Piece, man. This is, don't bring up One Piece.
triggered
If
you.
you don't have half an hour, you have me eat your head about.
But the problem is, you know, because this is kind of us charting a way forward.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
you
these are
obviously
great
acknowledge
stories,
that from a Pakistani perspective,
Yeah.
there might be certain religious cultural guardrails that these stories are violating in terms of certain plot lines or visuals,
Yeah.
right? But on the whole, is the narrative arc net positive for you? Yes. So when you make art in the future, maybe you reject certain visuals and certain plot points, but the arc, the real meaningful undergirding narrative remains.
Art should make you feel
Vibe.
good and make you motivated to do good things and empower
Make
you.
you a good
It
person.
empower you not in the gay way, but empower you in the, good stuff, man.
Not in the Instagram activist way.
Yeah.
In a genuinely, like, I'm a better
Yeah,
person
yeah,
for
yeah.
this. So look, we've spoken in very platonic terms about the ideal form of music and
Yeah.
art and literature,
Mm-hmm.
but there is obviously a reality which we are fortunately or unfortunately trenched in today.
Yeah.
What about modern creativity? Where do you see us, human beings as a whole?
Man, basically what I think is that modern art is defined by curation, not creation anymore, And I don't think it's because humans have lost the ability to be creative. I think it's more of a technological problem, okay? So let me try to explain. I think the creative process, right, is kind of a synthesis between, external knowledge and internal solitude. There's an influence and there's an internal, there's knowledge and there's ignorance.
So there's
you know?
something unique.
Yeah.
There's a unique vision that you harbor as an artist inside you.
Yeah.
You swipe up all these external influences,
Yeah.
and then those refract through your artistic being,
Yeah.
and they come out looking a little different.
Exactly, yeah. So there's kind of like an internal tension between, there's an internal dialectic of sorts between, the worldly knowledge and the internal imagination, the ignorant, the childlike, ethos, however you want to define it, you know. So that process to me really defines the creative process. I think that being said, like, you know, if you even went back like 40 years in time into the 1970s, right? A musician at that time, he had, you know, a bit of a limit on how much he could be influenced by external things, you know. He was geographically and technologically limited to, you know, his city, maybe his country. He could go to his local neighborhood record stores, you know, he could speak to his friends or his family about some good music recommendations to get influence from, you know. It was very, very limited, you know. Maybe he would buy a magazine every now and then, but his sphere of influence was limited, you know. The rest of it he had to fill in with his imagination. That's why if you look at like the 60s and 70s, there were such huge artistic movements at that time. It's because, yes, knowledge had started democratizing in a way, and that was playing well with people's imagination. There was a balance, you know, maybe 50% imagination, maybe 50% influence. It was a nice balance. I think in today's world, right, because technology has given us so much access to so many swaths of information, right? The amount of influences one can have are basically limitless, you know? Like I said, a musician from the 70s could maybe listen to 5 bands, 10 bands, 15 bands, you know? But it's a very, very limited influential factor, you know? Today, a guy like you and me, bro, we're one click away from our algorithm telling us that, you know, maybe you like the Spanish song, maybe you like this Russian heavy metal song, you know. It kind of defines it for us, you know. We're not limited to 20 artists like the musician from the 70s. We
So
have access to hundreds and thousands, you know.
a natural response to that would be you had 10 influences now.
Yeah,
Now you've got 100 people to choose from
exactly.
which to take inspiration from.
Exactly.
Why is that a bad thing?
I think that's a bad thing because it throws off the equilibrium. The equilibrium of being like, you know, there's a balance between imagination and influence.
And now the world is overwhelming the inside.
It's overwhelmingly influence. You know, influencer wasn't really a job back in the day. It's a modern job. So it's the power of, you know, the worldly knowledge, the things that can influence us are
The world's media machine.
The world's media machine is overwhelmingly influenced on the creative mind today, not in a way it was back then. You know,
Okay, let me ask you this.
imagination has very, very little space to fester because he's always being bombarded with information and new influences.
Let's
You
try
know?
and reconcile this a bit for what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
We both kind of agree in a rather elitist fashion
Yeah.
on the fact that most people are bad at regulating their intake of media.
Yeah.
Not just in the fact that they get into negative moral precepts because of it,
Yeah.
but they just don't know how to use it in an enriching manner,
Yeah.
right? You know what I mean? Which is like, yes, you like this artist, but I like him in a different way.
Yeah.
I like him better than you,
Yeah.
right? Which is, so we kind of think that's true,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So in today's world,
Yeah.
it may be true for a very large sum of people that if they didn't have this overwhelming influence earlier,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe they could have had a more honest dialectic with the outside world and been purer, more original artists,
I
right?
think so.
As opposed to,
Yeah.
but do you not think this also opens up a possibility for someone who has a very strong spiritual, artistic, ontological, very strong backbone,
Yeah.
who can look at these 100 influences
Mm-hmm.
and say that I'm going to be incredibly selective and I'm going to be very curative
Mm-hmm.
about how I take from them,
Yeah.
right? So there will also be that niche of people who can supercharge themselves artistically more than ever before.
I think, yeah, I mean, it's hyperstition, you know, if the idea is there, it probably will find its own reality. So I don't think that's impossible, you know. But what you touched upon is like, you know, there's this absolutely genius creative mind who's being influenced in many, many different ways by 100 different things and finds a way to put them together in a beautiful fashion. I don't think it's any less art than it was back then. But I am explicitly saying that the creative process is different. It's not as much creation as it is curation, you know. putting a lot of different pieces together. There's an architectural element to the modern creative, which I'm sure it was back there as well. I'm not saying that they weren't like, listening to things and getting influenced by it. Half the rock bands of like the 70s and 80s were deeply influenced by the Beatles. But because of the lack of a media super machine always feeding them new influential factors, I think they were more imaginative. And if you really listen to music from the time, or listen to, or look at painting from the time, I mean, you compare like, Picasso's a little bit earlier, I think 50s, 60s. When you compare Picasso to like modern guy like Banksy or something, there's a farak in
We'll get
they
to that.
create like these are like maybe the most important artists of that generation, the most important artists of this generation. Is the world's difference in
Jeff
how
Koons and his balloon dogs.
yeah, the world is different between the creative process of that, or the creative output of that, and the creative output of this. You know what I mean?
Rothko with whatever the fuck was weird. But okay,
Yeah, but
now, let me ask you this.
I'm not saying they're bad.
So,
I don't really understand it, but there's a difference.
Does the hyperstition idea not go in favor of the modern creator? Because think about it this way. If you're someone who's amassed a reasonably big following online, and if you've got something that's really left field and weird,
Yeah.
right? I think you would argue that that's not possible, but
Yeah.
but suppose that happens. It's not a possibility. Would the process of hyperstition, which is, in layman's terms, if an idea is pushed enough by the machine or by the algorithm, it eventually acts itself into existence. It
Yeah.
propagates itself into existence and
Yeah.
into meaning,
Yeah.
right? Does that left field weirdo not have more room than ever through this technology to make his weird idea something? One, right? And two, relating it back to what you said earlier, that you said, there's these 100 influences. I would say, doesn't it also open up the possibility of an individual? Like, we've had this conversation before. We respect taste because someone's experienced the whole gamut of a genre.
Yeah.
They've explored every niche.
Yeah.
And they've come back to what they held dear and said that this is what I love.
Yeah.
Whether it's Taylor Swift or it's Playboy Cardi, we respect them because they've put in the intellectual work
Yeah.
to get to a respectable opinion.
Yeah.
The same way, when you've got this endless array,
Yeah.
you're just awash with different influences, different creators,
Yeah.
right? The true 1% genius intellectual,
Yeah.
or let's just say the true original artist with a genuine inner voice,
Yeah.
does he not have more purity than ever when he battles all those influences, curates or creates his own taste out of them, and then comes back into his own, has his synthesis moment and it comes into his own? Or, just as the last thing, is that kind of an outlier because a genius 1% will always do that anyway?
Okay, so that's a lot to follow, but like that there's a lot there. But once again, I don't want to put a moralizing stance on it was better back then or it's better today. I think the metaphysics of it are inherently different. I do think a tasteful master curator or creator today can come up with some amazing stuff. Like if you look at the top house electronic music virtuosos today, they're not classically trained musicians, most of them. They can't play instruments, they're not composers, but they have an uncanny talent to maybe spot this AC sound and be like, hey, you know what, I can sample this and I can loop this and I can make it into something brilliant, But that
Kanye's
is
production.
Huh?
Kanye's production.
Yeah, but that is inherently curating because it's an already existing thing that you have taken and you're remixing it. It's an iteration of an iteration, It's not to say it isn't brilliant. It can be brilliant, but the metaphysics are different. It's not creating out of ex nihilo, It just isn't. The nature of it isn't, I would say that some of the top musical minds today are electronic music people, house music people. I'm big into. I think house music has the best to offer in modern music, personally. But like I said, they are masterful curators. They're piecing together, Afro music with Spanish music, with Berlin techno. They're mixing all these elements together and making something really, really interesting out of it. But it's still a curation. It's not a creation.
So
You
would
know
you
what I mean?
say that human beings on Mars have had this since time immemorial, this arc of innovating artistically,
Yeah.
right? And sure, there was something cyclical about it then too, But now, more than ever before, we've hit a brick wall in terms of originality.
I think that is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Okay, you know what this reminds me of,
Yeah.
actually?
That is, let me just say, I think that is exactly what's happening. Where I think we've reached kind of like an end of history in terms
I
of
was
end of
literally
art
gonna.
history.
I was. That is
I
exactly
think we
what I was
have
gonna say.
reached the end of
Yeah.
artistic history where it's like 99% of things that had to be said, that had to be depicted, that had to be communicated already have been. And I think the future lies in more iterations and more remixes. And we were seeing this play out today, look at this revival of this old money style.
But okay,
This is harkening back to some yesteryear that we are, you know, mostly disassociated from. It's a remixing of a past. Let's look at the rise of 80s synths in modern music. Dua Lipa, Weekend have been doing this a lot, playing with like Elton John and things like this. 80s pop. It's still a remix. It's a remix of a remix of a remix. And I think modern art and future art has more of this to hold for us, where it's like reinterpretations of the past. I think we have reached the end of artistic history.
so the question, great minds think alike. I was just gonna say that the number one midwit history buff book, End of History by Francis Fukuyama. I'm gonna be like, is this
Yeah.
a creative end of history? But then
This
there's
history was first coined by Hegel,
There's a-
by the way.
okay, but I was gonna say in reference
I'm
to the
gonna
fact.
counter the midwit with
Yeah.
the ultimate.
No, no, no.
wit, Okay?
Yeah, no, fair.
Yeah.
No, my point being though that in this latest iteration, coincidentally, of the
Yeah.
end of history,
Yeah.
the rejection of it is the 90s idea was liberal democracy is clearly the best form of government. So yes, we'll have iterations of it around the world, but we don't need to remix the entire thing.
We don't have to change it there.
You don't have
We
to-
can remix.
So then over the next 10, 20, 30 years, you see that entire illusion of its finality fall away, crumble before your eyes in an undeniable manner, right? So, do you think we've truly reached this, uh, blackened, soulless ceiling to creativity? Or do you think this is something that our dominant monoculture has fooled us into thinking the same way the liberal democracy establishment fooled people into thinking this in the 90s, and that we actually can break out of it?
I think absolutely we can and we will break out of it. But I think over the next
So, see, that's the whole core of
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. But over the next few years, this end of history aspect is going to come very, very clear. I think it already is being like, very, very clear to people, where a lot of people like, it's not just, a bunch of boomers who are saying, oh, new music sucks, new movies suck. Our people are saying it as well. So we
Every generation says it.
no, but
Yeah.
it's getting more. Like there's no
Yeah.
doubt that the harkening back to a more beautiful time, a more pure time. All of our media is promoting this. Our fashion sense is promoting this idea. Our current music is promoting this idea. I don't know what it was back then, but this is the mainstream monoculture right now. I think what we're going to get to is that there's going to be the dialectic always comes full circle. This is not the end of history. The antithesis is coming, and the synthesis is probably going to be the creation of for music, like new instruments altogether that require, like, there's a new guitar, there's a new piano, there's a new drums, what I mean? We've reached the end of history with these set of tools, It doesn't mean we have reached the end of history altogether. With these tools, though, I think we've exhausted. I don't think there's more. Like, think of it in the past, man. Like, if you ever, like, I know you're not much into rock music, and I keep coming to music as an example for this because it's just convenient. But I know you're not much into rock, but if you ever open up a list of, the 100 most influential guitarists of all time, the 100 greatest guitarists of all time, the vast majority of them are from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, maybe some 90s guys. There aren't any contemporary guys. And it's not for a lack of technical skill on their part. They're more technical than those guys are. It's just their stuff is not saying anything new that those guys hadn't already pioneered. The greatness is not the influential, not being defined by technical skill. It's being defined by, well, this changed the way we think about the sound of our guitars, And these guys are all old now. So I do think we're reaching an end of history with, let's say, those current instruments or those current tools. And maybe with technological development, the antithesis is, total rejection, and we come up with new instruments. I don't know.
Like, if someone were to ask me, do I see a a path forward in the art form that I understand best, which is literature, prose, poetry. I do actually,
Yeah.
right? But I think that maybe for someone who is not operating at the frontiers, who doesn't give it as much time, imagining a new instrument would be as difficult as like someone asks you to imagine a new color.
Yeah.
You know, it's not easy to do.
Yeah.
So the popular illusion that we've allowed ourselves to be subjugated to, this spell of endless monotony of recycling.
But usually it's endless monotony and recycling because we've seen all of it already.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not like, it's not even the creator's fault in a lot of ways. It's just we've seen all of it. What haven't we fucking seen?
Okay, but let's ask another question.
Yeah.
Which is, okay, you've really flattened the mainstream.
Yeah.
You formulaically on almost a scientific chemical level
Yeah.
know when a song's gonna be a hit,
Yeah.
right? So you've got the same hit makers pumping out beats, same marketing campaigns, all of that. Yeah. So you've got all of these that have just captured 80% of the culture, and then the 20% that's kind of on the outside. There's a lot of slop, but then I still believe this.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of newfound quality.
Yeah.
Now, your response to that, which I don't necessarily disagree with, would be that yes, that is good quality artistic output, but it is still assembled as opposed to created.
Yeah.
But we can
It's
also
music
yeah,
yeah.
we can also see that suppose we're ambiguous about the curation versus creation debate. From a pure objective beauty standpoint, from a perfection of Platonic form standpoint,
Yeah.
there is a lot of art today that is still very beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not debating that. I think stuff can still be really moving and still be really beautiful. I just think
I actually think it's increasingly on the fringe though. I think it's more on the fringe than it was before. Like in certain scenarios, like for example,
give me an example.
when I see the Jeff Koons balloon dog,
Yeah.
Rothko, maybe it's not as bad, but even James Turrell's like the very simple light displays, or Barnett Newman,
I don't know.
the one white line on a blue on a blue canvas.
We'll pull it up.
Right, we'll pull it up, and it won another $43 million.
Yeah.
$84 million for a black and white block. We will put it up.
Yeah.
Right? That's 24 billion rupees. Right? And I'm not going to moralize about how you shouldn't have expensive private art. I think that's perfectly acceptable. Right?
Yeah.
Sure, there's a lot of money laundering, but it's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
But for slop, nobody can convince me that the banana on the blank white canvas, the banana taped to it, should sell for $6 million.
Yeah.
Right? You can it's just not happening.
Yeah.
I never want to be that current, that meta, that cool.
Yeah.
That I look at
I'm
that.
not that cool, bro.
I'm not that cool, man.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not that cool, bro.
And like, by the way, this is coming like, we're surrounded by beautiful art. We're surrounded by modern art sculptures everywhere in this house, right?
Yeah.
We're not.
Don't leave the location. I'll get doxxed.
Yeah. But we're not at all insensitive to newer forms of art. I think we're very attuned to them.
Yeah.
Right? But there's a level after which it's just bullshit.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Absolutely. There's nothing more I can add to that. I agree with it, That being said, I do want to pivot back to a different thing we've kind of been alluding to as well, which is niche, which is weirdos, which is outsideness, What do you think of this? We've been alluding to it. I want your opinion.
Man, look, we've been talking about it, and I find your idea that, and correct me if I'm misrepresenting or misunderstanding, that it's hard to be niche in the time of technology when everything's got a market.
Yeah.
And I see how that makes sense. But at the same time, there's still relative nicheness because there will always be the dominant media with massive following, and then by nature there'll be smaller creators,
Mm.
right? So I'm quite split on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think you got my idea for the most part, but I still think that where you're getting it wrong is that you're associating niche and commercial success a little bit, you know? When I say that I don't think a niche can really exist, it's not about like the ability for commercialization. What I really mean to say is that, okay, let's say you are a Samoan death metal band that likes to write love songs, okay?
Mm-hmm.
30 years ago, there wouldn't have been a market for it. And it's not about the market, let me clarify. 30 years ago, there wouldn't have been any audience for it. There wouldn't have been a market for it. Today, the algorithm will find you a market. You know, there are some weirdos who probably into that stuff. Who knows, man? You know?
People
But I
who
mean,
don't even know they're into it and they'll find it.
people who weren't even into it, the algorithm will decide for them that they like it, and they probably will. I think because there's an audience for practically every weird postmodern iteration of an iteration, remix of a remix, right? Things cannot really be outside anymore. Nothing really feels outside. I remember when I was like growing up and I was in school, right?
So
The demarcation, like I'll give you a more practical example. The demarcation between what was cool and what was not was very pronounced. You know, the cool kids wore Hollister, Abercrombie. The cool kids like sports. The cool kids, you know, did X, Y. Like, you know, very quintessential American bike cool kids, you know? And the weird kids went to the theater, the weird kids went to this, the weird kids were like, you know,
cutting themselves,
etc. I don't go to school right now. I'm like 20, almost 29.
I hope not.
But I think there's been a big flattening out of the weirdness out. I don't think anything is really that weird anymore, you know? Because like I said, if you feel like you are an outsider, you are the algorithm away from finding people to resonate with, to find communities that you can connect with, you know? There's a subreddit for practically everything, you know? So nothing is really that outside anymore. And communities aren't just formed on territorial basis anymore. They are formed increasingly more through the phone, through the internet, you know? And because there's like a group for everything, nothing is really that weird. If you know some kid tells you tomorrow that he's into Samoan death metal, you probably wouldn't think that that's weird. You would be like, okay, fine, fair enough, man. Everything is kind of okay in today's world.
But what's wrong with this? Because I'm getting the feeling that you don't like that it's like this.
It's not that I'm saying that there's anything wrong with it. I just don't think harkening back to it, I just don't think anything can be niche anymore, you know? Because there's an audience for everything. There's no such thing as an outsider. You know, the Overton window, there's no such thing as an Overton window anymore, you know? It just doesn't exist. Anything is applicable. Anything is allowed. Where I do think that I have some concern is that without a real Overton window, it's tough to, at least in the language we use, categorize things anymore. Things escape categorization. It's a Venn diagram and a Venn diagram and a Venn diagram at this point. You know what I mean? People can have such diverse interests and tastes and stuff, and in some ways it's a good thing, you know? I like the post-school word.
So I'm still having a bit of difficulty putting my finger down on your exact point. Because do you think there's value in niche?
I love niche. I think there's great value in niche. But niche as we understand it isn't really niche anymore. Because niche implies some sort of limitation. Niche implies some sort of closed audience. Niche implies some sort of, hey, there are boundaries.
But
This is kind of a members club that you need to kind of earn your stripes to get into. Niche has these implications to me when I think of niche. You know, this is for the people in the know. I think that the boundaries have never been lowered. It's like, you know, you can get into anything.
In relative terms,
Yeah.
that still seems to apply to, say, Samoan death metal,
Yeah.
right? Maybe now, maybe earlier before the internet,
Yeah.
the Samoan death metal band would have had,
It would have been extremely localized.
maybe it would have had 50 fans,
Yeah.
right? And maybe with the internet, it has 5,000 fans,
Yeah.
right? But also the size of the entire pie has gone a lot larger. Because whereas if the mainstream rock band earlier had 10 million followers, they might now have 20 million followers. So, in relative terms, it's still niche. And if you then make the argument that, well, sure, it's still much smaller, which it obviously still is. You don't need to make an effort to get into it.
Yeah.
But I would argue that even on a purely algorithmical level, Like, again, those memes, they mean something, which are like, I fought for this algorithm, I built this algorithm brick by brick.
Yeah.
To get to really niche things, you have to ride the wave of several different esoteric interests before the Instagram algorithm rewards you with Samoan deathmatch.
Yeah, that's some great curation on your part, man. I agree with you. That's some great curation on your part. I'm not saying it isn't. Once again, I'm not making an ethical judgment on the nature of this new.
No, I'm not making an ethical judgment.
Yeah,
I'm saying,
I'm just
how is
saying-
it not niche?
Huh?
How is
It's
it not?
not niche because there's no closed. It's not a members club anymore. There's no closed boundaries. There's no territorialization around it anymore. Niche.
But
really-
territorialization
Yeah.
does not mean and never meant physical territorialization or deterritorialization. It just meant access.
Access,
Right?
but yeah,
But
but
if
access
access
is so the access is so democratized now. How can it be niche? It's literally one algorithmic mistake away from being the most viral thing in the world, bro.
But
We're literally one random celebrity shares it, and it's not niche anymore. It's in the mainstream. It's the latest meme. The ability for everything to be turned into a meme. Real niche things back in the day. I didn't live back in the day, but I can imagine it was close to impossible for them to break into the mainstream. Everything is a click away from breaking to the mainstream. If tomorrow, who's the
See,
most followed
that
person?
is-
If Cristiano Ronaldo shares Samoan death medal tomorrow, it's not niche anymore.
sure, very unlikely
not.
scenario.
Yeah.
And that's obviously that's the exception and not the norm.
Yeah.
But for the norm, where most things, most niche things, just for the sake of experience, most niche things that are operating in their own little silo in the world, right? Again, what I come back to is
But they're not operating in their own little silo. Man, the algorithm creates Venn diagrams on Venn diagrams, The algorithm, I might not have ever heard of this, but maybe the algorithm thinks, you know what, maybe you might be into this.
look,
That's why
the
there's
reason-
no, it's not even territorialization. I don't even just mean it geographically. Even metaphysically, even intellectually.
What is the
Venn
meaningful
diagram of the Venn
difference?
diagram make it impossible.
my question is,
Yeah.
what is the meaningful difference?
Uh,
If in relative terms, one subculture is still very small compared to the monoculture. That is as true today as it was yesterday.
because
You can argue the niche case where someone picks it up and it blows up, but for most of them it won't happen.
No, it isn't. But let's say if back then you had a 1% chance of ever blowing up, and realistically you wouldn't. You're just kind of doing it out of the love of the game, and it's like, hey, it's 50 of us that we with Samoan death metal, Today, that's not the case. Today, if you're doing something niche, it's like, hey, listen, let me tweak it a little bit. Let me make this mainstream. I can commercialize this very, very easily. Modern technology, I think it flattens out the niche. It's much, like, maybe if back then it took you 10 years to build a sizable audience and then sell out, bro, it takes you 5 months to sell out today, I'm posting maybe tomorrow, like, do you think, okay, practically, suppose we were exactly the same people with the exact same life experiences and exact same thoughts. But we started this podcast not in 2025, but in 2015. We decided, would we have started it in 2015? You think?
No, never.
Why do you think so?
It just wasn't a cool thing to do. It wasn't socially acceptable.
It was too niche.
Yeah.
It was too niche. Right now, you and I feel confident that, hey, listen, right now we have our 700-800 followers, we get our 50-60 likes. We're one algorithmic blow up away from having 5,000 followers. We would have never even dreamt this if we were put into the 2015.
But looking at it practically, as someone who's always wanted to be in the media,
Yeah.
right? When I was 15, I was thinking, okay, this is my pathway to breaking into mainstream media and going on TV channels,
Yeah.
right? Instead, which would have flattened my voice a lot faster than what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
No?
Perhaps.
Of course.
But no, perhaps it could have.
No,
Maybe
of course.
it would have.
I can't have this conversation or any of the conversations we've had on mainstream Pakistani TV. No one would want to see it.
I'm fine with that. Yeah, the algorithm finds an audience. That it does, But the
No, I'm not. Don't make that argument for me. I'm saying contend with this reality that I just gave.
contend with what reality?
That we're practicing niche right now.
I
The
don't-
alternative.
I don't think we're practicing niche, brother. I think you and I are the ultimate curators in a lot of ways. I read a bunch of weird shit. You read a bunch of weird shit. It's like, hey, can we talk about
But I
this
mean,
weird
yeah,
shit?
Aristotle and like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Borges also read a bunch of weird shit.
Yeah,
And then they had some output.
I'm not putting us down in
Yeah.
any way. I'm not even comparing us to them. All I'm saying is that we are quite literally the format of our little experiment over here is curation, bro. We're not actively creating something new. It's no harm on us for not doing that. I don't think anybody really can.
I don't agree with that.
I don't think anybody really can. We're parroting in a lot of ways. Not parroting. We have good curation, but we're just talking about those ideas that we already have in a lot of ways. And I think that it's much needed in Pakistan. Don't get me wrong. It is much needed. I think that we don't have enough weird stuff going on. So I'm not saying it in a negative lens as well. That's why in a lot of ways, we want to do it. It's like, hey, man, we have something unique to say. But a unique thing to say is based on a lot of stuff that we have curated over the years.
Okay, answer this.
Yeah.
How, when, and for who has that not been true? For which thinker has that not been true?
I think for a lot of the thinkers of the past, they would have not one iota of the influence that we have. They not one influence, but access to one iota of the different sources and different things that we have, bro. They didn't have the internet to just say, like, bro, can I download a PDF of Nietzsche? Can I download a PDF of Allama Iqbal? Can I download a PDF? They didn't have that.
No, sure, but
I'm library to get that information.
I'm coming back
to it. It was much harder for them.
I'm coming back to your fundamental logic.
Yeah.
Which is that I actually don't conceptualize myself like this at all.
Yeah.
But if you conceptualize it as curation, because we have a bunch of influences, and then we've taken what we can from those ideas, and then we're presenting them, right? I personally think that I innovate and I adapt because I have a very fixed worldview. So So then I'm asking, that description you gave to set us apart from curators and creators.
Yeah.
Which thinker does that not apply to?
Which thinker does that not apply to? I have to go through their entire lifespans and stuff and everything. But I think you can reasonably say
no, but to make such a broad generalization, you have to have there must be someone.
I mean, yes, there is someone. If you wanna like, there's somebody whose life I know by heart is like, let's take Friedrich Nietzsche for a very, very simple instance. He had a very, very limited scope of things he knew about. He knew about German philosophy. He knew about Christian philosophy. He knew about Christianity. He knew about some theology.
Are you familiar with Schopenhauer?
Are you gonna let me finish my point, or are you gonna be smart?
I'm just asking because I think this is the worst example you could give.
No. I think that I think he had his influences.
Of course.
He didn't have, he sometimes he alluded to, maybe the Islamic religion would have been better for the Germanic people. It fits their temperament as well. He didn't have access to those Islamic scripts to come up with that. He was just basing on his imagination. Based on what I understand of the Islamic people, maybe this would have suited the German temperament better. He said this. He didn't read Islam. He didn't read Buddhism. He had all these complaints about Christian, morality. He didn't read Buddhism. What would he have thought of Buddhism? A modern thinker can easily say that, if a modern Nietzsche doesn't have those limitations, he can be like, okay, you know what? Yes, the Islam does or does not fit the German temperament. Christianity might have these, impulses of reactivity, but what about Buddhism? Is that even more passive than Christianity? He didn't have access to that information, did he? He had to fill in a lot of those blanks.
No, I mean, of course, not in the same way that we do today, but of course he knew and read about other religions.
And that's exactly my point, where his creative process was defined by, probably there's some degree of imagination going on and there's some degree of influence, carrying the testament of the German Enlightenment, of Schopenhauer, of Christian theology, of Plato, of Wagner.
All of them. They're all his intellectual forefathers.
Yes, they are.
He's a culmination of a grand tradition.
Yes, tradition. It's not cross tradition. It's not transnational. It's not. He's not taking Lao Tzu and Allama Iqbal was there at the point, but he's not taking Lao Tzu and Ibn Khaldun and merging them into one. Is he? He doesn't have that access. He's very, very limited by the territorial access of the European tradition, of the Christian tradition. That's what he's exposed to, and that's the canon he goes through. The scope of his analysis of his philosophy goes from Greece as its easternmost point, and maybe France as its most western point. That's where it's limited. He can't draw on Arabic influence. He can't draw on Chinese influence. He can't draw on Japanese influence. He can infer that maybe the Japanese samurai culture would have suited the Germans better. He can infer that maybe the Islamic warrior tradition would have suited the Germans better, but he can't say for certain. He doesn't have. He can't have. He's not ability. He's not able to have that much influence.
All this entire logic you presented does is change your argument from someone curating from across the world and someone curating from across the continent.
No, absolutely not. My entire argument from the beginning is that there's a balance, there's an equilibrium between knowledge and imagination. I'm saying that he was a supremely knowledgeable man, but he was also a man with supreme imagination, and those two things could have been synthesized in a conductive way, where it was probably 50-50. He was the first person who turned this entire Christian morality, Platonic ideal on its head. It was limited to that. What I'm saying is that there's an Overton window. There's a European Overton window he's operating in. You know what I mean? There's a balance, there's an equilibrium to his art. I don't think that equilibrium can exist today. I think imagination has much less of a role. It actually fits my argument if you really think about it.
I mean, but you held earlier imagination as a constant. You said, people are still imaginative. It's just that what has changed is the amount of influence they
That's not what I said. What I said was that people don't have space to be imaginative anymore because of technology and the algorithm constantly bombarding us with information and we don't have room to be imaginative anymore.
So internal ability still exists restively, but what has changed is that there's so many external influences.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I said. Yeah.
So, what is the substantive difference from a personal level in between having 100 influences and having 30?
There's an Overton window, because if you have like maybe 30 influences, right, all of them, the Venn diagramming is a bit more limited, they're kind of connected. It's very, very easy to see how a guy who read Plato got into Schopenhauer, who got into Wagner, who got into this. It's very, very difficult to think of how a guy in the 1800s got from all of this stuff to Samoan music tradition and how he's going to synthesize those. Today, a guy can do that, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Maybe it works out well. But he couldn't do that. He didn't have access to their script. He doesn't have translation of their works. He's limited, And that's why his imagination had to fill in the blanks in a lot of ways. I don't think you can argue that.
The thing is, look, again, this does not actually affect the logic of your argument, because the logic of your argument still is just that the number of influences is expanded, and you have not mechanically shown how that suddenly dims the human light.
I'm not saying it dims the human light. I've never said that at all. I said modern art can be good. I've never said modern art is dim. I'm saying that the equilibrium between external knowledge and internal solitude, between the world and imagination it's not an equilibrium anymore. If it was a 50-50 balance, it's a 70-30 balance. Maybe it's an 80-20 balance. And that creates more iteration than unique, really, really new things. That's the crux of my argument. That's the crux of my argument. There's less genuinely authentic new things because the power of influence, the power of the world, the power of knowledge is much stronger than the power of imagination today. That's the crux of what I'm saying.
So, the burger shop.
Yeah.
What I keep going back to in all of this is that
did I answer your question?
Whether this podcast
did I satisfy you?
I just fundamentally disagree. I think there's value in the idea.
Yeah.
And let me tell you where I find the idea really useful from an analytical perspective.
Yeah.
When you see that nothing's really weird anymore, that's where I'm kind of still a bit undecided, Can
I give you a very practical example?
Yeah, sure.
You were just telling me about how one of your best friends, younger brothers, is the funniest guy in the world because he talks in this weird, esoteric slang and he doesn't talk like a normal person. Okay, now let's say 20 years ago, if your best friend, younger brother was like that, do you still think it's cool and kind of cute, or you're like, hey, what's up with that?
No, I don't think that's a good example because...
I'm just saying, this is language.
No, the reason specifically because of that is because he is using a very mainstream form of ebonics, which he's learned from the mainstream culture.
Yeah.
Which is like, say in the 60s or 70s, you had the transatlantic accent, which was also then a thing amongst Pakistanis.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't think that's maybe a good example, but...
Well, I remember being back in school and certain things like, don't do this, don't act like this. It's kind of weird. I just don't see that.
I mean, cringe is back in Gen Z.
I think we're post-cringe.
The entire discourse around Gen Z is that they've like millennial was there's no such thing as cringe. We're gonna do like face humor and whatnot. And Gen Z's brought back cringe. Gen Z's brought back bullying. Gen Z's brought back shame. Gen Z's brought back religion. And in that world, I think there are definitely things that are weird again.
Absolutely not. I think on the other end of the extreme, there's.
So then, why is there bullying?
Bullying's always been there.
You bully the outcasts and the weirdos,
Yeah.
right? So why is there bullying of people for like being into like those inflatable Japanese waifus or
I don't.
like whatever,
I don't think.
or like furries or
It's not as bad as it used to be because those guys are like, okay, fine, man. These guys think I'm an asshole. I'll find a subreddit of people who kind of into me, who kind of into the stuff I'm into.
That's the subculture.
That's a subculture, but it's not really a subculture. It's not like a limited thing. It's not like a member. It's like, hey man, like, can I find something to like kind of affirm my beliefs? So I think you're living in a much more post-shame society, post-cringe society where nothing is really cringe.
I agree. I would have agreed with you 3 years ago.
Let's say we were living, if we were in school, we would automatically think, who's that weird? You know?
No, I
don't
think
it's that weird anymore.
I would have agreed with you 100% 3 years ago. But I think the Gen Z demographic change is obvious. And in fact, it's not just obvious, it's one of the most talked about, observed, and studied social phenomena today. Like, I don't know if you saw that poll, like, belief in God in Gen Z has like tripled.
Yeah.
Trump,
It
they're
has,
a lot more
yes,
conservative.
but yes,
They're
but
pro-Trump,
all-
and then all of the
A lot.
Kamala associated stuff, which includes like furries and includes, they're bullying the shit out of people for it again. Which is why all
Yeah,
the memes about
but
bring shame back and all of that.
But that's our algorithm. The other algorithm, the counter algorithm of people who are into it is as strong as ever, bro. Now we're getting these.
I mean, the
violent
tripling,
No, no,
a
listen,
statistical tripling is not an algorithm; it's
Huh?
an established fact.
I mean, bro, you keep saying these things, but also you can open your eyes and see that, you know, you don't have trans shooters who satanic trans shooters before, you know, and people are empathizing with that entire thing. You know what I mean? That's our algorithm. Our algorithm is telling us that, you know,
Oh, but a statistic is not our algorithm.
yes, there is a reaction because maybe the leftist thing took it too far. And now the right people are, our side in a lot of ways might be, in their opinion, taking it too far with media censorship.
I mean, what's the argument? Is the argument that there are two political sides and some things are weird in one and some things are weird in the other? Of course, that's always been true, and it might change a little bit. But you're making the blanket statement that nothing is weird anymore.
I don't think
right?
anything is
Yeah.
weird anymore.
So,
What's
but
weird?
you're at the
Okay,
very
tell me
least.
what's weird.
You're
Okay,
at the.
tell me what's weird. Tell me what's
Understand,
weird.
you're at the very least acknowledging then,
What?
in the same breath, that yes, in a certain algorithm, certain things are weird. Of course.
In a certain algorithm, certain things are like not permitted, but they're not weird. It's not like, hey, that's not normal. It's like, yeah, that's normal. There's a place for that as well, man. There's a group of people who like to have sex with Japanese dolls. There's a group of people who like to have sex with dead things. There's a group of people who are into all types of weird things. You know what I mean? But we're not being like, I'm not shocked. Are you shocked? Would you be shocked if a lot of people would tell you that they're into this stuff tomorrow? I wouldn't be, man. I really wouldn't be. If somebody told you that they're into the most weird, disgusting thing in the world, they have the most disgusting kink in the world, would you be shocked? I mean, not really, man.
I think no. Okay, then no.
Everything
then
is desensitized.
maybe
It's not really that weird.
If it's shock
There's
value,
probably
then I
millions
agree
of
with you.
people who are into it, yeah.
If it's shock value, then I agree with you. And maybe we've been on a semantic tilt this whole time because weird though a lot of things definitely are. Yeah, there's certain things that it won't shock me. Like when I see the furry stuff, I'm like, yeah, this is fucking strange, but this happens.
What would shock you today? Did you get shocked when you heard that these trans shooters had satanic thing, that a satanic manifesto? I was like, yeah, okay, fair enough.
It did actually a little bit.
It didn't shock me, bro. I mean, it's obvious that things are gonna go very, very far. It's like, you know, if we have neo-Nazis, we have that too,
What's
bro.
not
Like,
shocking?
it's not shocking.
That's not the shocking part about it.
Yeah.
The shocking part about it is the horseshoe theory stuff, which is that they had elements of extreme right and extreme left. So they're virulently anti-Semitic, also very anti-Islam, also very pro-trans, also satanic. So there's like this confluence of so many things. That angle certainly did surprise me. No, but I will say the thrust of the argument I still agree with, which is that there are many orders of magnitude fewer things today that would shock me in coming into the mainstream than ever before. That, sure.
That's
sure.
the point. That's the point. And because there's kind of a room for everything today, everything in the mainstream discourse, I don't think things can really be niche, limited niche, exclusive. And I just don't think it's possible. Technologically, it's not possible, man. If these people can find the most random things to jumble up and to make a coherent worldview, in their opinions, coherent. And if you read their manifesto, maybe it is coherent. Maybe it makes sense how you ended up here.
One last question, because I think, again, despite some very pertinent analysis, I still don't agree with the overall thing, and I'll just ask you this.
Okay.
Obviously, there are niches on the periphery with small followings, and which exist independent of the cherry-pick situation where
I just want you to clarify something. So when you say niche, you mean small communities, right?
I mean small subcultures.
Small subcultures.
Small subcultures, right?
Subcultures are communities. Let's say small communities of people.
I use them interchangeably. I don't understand.
The language semantics are kind of important in the same. Maybe we're understanding these things totally different. What you mean is small communities with like-minded interests.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when I say small, I don't mean small as in 5-10 people. I mean small in a significant way compared to the mainstream. Right? That's what I mean. They are still relatively to the mainstream by virtue of being much smaller. They are still niche, not necessarily in the sense of original. I find that to be it's a related thing.
I'm not relating the two here.
Yeah. So is it not by definition niche? So for me, it seems semantically obvious that, of course, this smaller community is niche compared to... how is that not...
No.
Do you disagree with that?
If you define it as, is this small community with esoteric interests numerically less than the mainstream? Yeah, there's nothing, yeah, of course, there's no doubt about that. That's not what I'm arguing at all, though. I agree with you. There's nothing to argue over there. Yeah, they're smaller than the mainstream. I do think that
but they don't harbor original ideas anymore, the way they used to, at least.
Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I think for the most part they don't. I think the more takeaway, because these are two separate conversations. I think they're linked, but they're two separate. I think that the niche, what I'm defining as niche, is that, there's a small subcultures and stuff, but there's a in the past, there might have been a limiting factor, be it territorial, be it geographic, be it intellectual, be it language based. There was a limiting factor that would kind of make it statistically impossible for their thing to ever be in the mainstream. I don't think that exists anymore. I think no matter how niche it is, it can find itself into the mainstream.
But the potential for being mainstream
is higher.
But that's not the same thing as being mainstream. You can say everything. You can make the very marginal, the marginal, near impossible scenario of Cristiano Ronaldo picking something up, or even someone more famous. By definition, that will not happen to most things. Of course it won't. So to contend with that majority is much more important than saying this might become popular one.
That small thing had access to all of our eyes in a way it didn't before, right?
But but again, by
it's not fine. Maybe it's not fine.
Yeah, it won't.
Maybe it isn't. Theoretically it does, right? Theoretically it does.
But again,
if it Murphy's law, okay, because you like to use all these weird terminologies, Murphy's law, if it has a possibility of happening, it will happen, right? Worst thing that can happen will happen, right? It can find its way into our algorithm, can it not? What was the realistic...
That's not the point. That's not the point.
It is the point. That's why I keep saying that it can't be weird anymore, because it's not beyond the realm of possibilities. I would have never imagined,
that's about the content. That's kind of different.
No, it isn't. Nothing can shock me anymore. I'm defining niche as if, something hidden, esoteric. It's hidden. I don't even know about it. There's nothing that's not one click away from me knowing about it. That's why it can't be niche to me. It's not hidden. It's not esoteric. Even Kabbalah, which is literally the definition of Kabbalah, is esoteric. It's not really esoteric anymore because we all know about it, man.
But not every small thing will reach you. In fact, there will be...
No, it won't. But if I wanted to, it will reach me, brother. If the algorithm decides it's going to reach me today, it will. That possibility wasn't there in the past.
I mean, that's such an incredibly superficial layer of analysis. Because if you let me finish, I'll tell you why it is. And if you can answer, then you can answer.
Yeah.
If just say it reaches you, obviously most things won't. Most things with 5,000 followers on Instagram will not reach most people, and even if they do come across your feed, you will most likely swipe past it unless it was suggested to you for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? If you do not resonate with that line of thinking which led that content to you,
Yeah.
right? You're gonna swipe past it.
Maybe.
If you like it, you might see it.
Yeah.
Right? And if you've encountered it and you have had this tradition which has led you to it, then you're incorporated into that subculture. And it will only organically grow up into that point that it resonates with people. Of course, then there will always be gradations of things that are popular and then less popular and then less popular. How are those things not different, not unique?
In the past, I'll tell you what's the difference. In the past, those things had no chance to ever reach me. Now they do. And because they do have a chance to reach me and you and all of us, if not me, not you, maybe your brother, maybe your father, maybe your mother, it will reach them and we will hear about it and it will no longer be hidden in niche anymore. We know about it. Coming back to
so just because
let me
finish.
Coming back to the thing, our psychological response to the weirdest thing in the world right now is not, oh wow, I didn't even know that existed. It is, yeah, I'm not surprised. Weird things are out there, I know. That our numbness to it, our numbness to the weirdness, nicheness is kind of a testament to the fact that it's not really that weird. Because weird has a shock connotation to it. Weird has a disturbed connotation. Weird has an unusual connotation to it.
I mean,
none of these things have those.
We've gone from niche to weird to shock. With shock, I agree with you. Weird, I'm half and half.
Yeah.
With niche, I completely disagree.
Niche, if we talk about small community, yes, okay. If you want to play semantics, yeah, niche is small.
No,
yeah,
but
it is small.
It's not semantics.
I think it is semantics.
I mean,
I really think it's semantics. What is it? It's small. Yes, small thing that exists.
I mean, semantics is shifting from niche to weird to shock. We started at niche, then you change it to shock, to weird, then you change it to shock.
That's nuance. That's nuance. I'm trying to explain my point because I don't think you're understanding it, so I'm trying to explain it to you.
But I'm going to clarify it.
Not really. I asked.
We were talking about weird, and then you said nothing shocks me, and then I said, "Oh, did you mean shock as opposed to?"
Okay, if that makes you happy, but I explicitly asked you, can we define niche? Can we define these things? You asked me for an example of a difference in the past, and I told you Nietzsche. I told you Nietzsche's life story. So
I mean,
I think trying to explain my nuance. So it did not.
Of course,
absolutely.
Let's in a one line deny this if you can.
Yeah.
You said that we're sitting here and we're curating a lot of people's ideas.
Yeah.
And then we're giving our take on them.
Yeah.
So we're curators.
Yeah.
So then I asked, who does that not apply to? Who did not stand on the shoulders of someone and create?
All of them did, but I think they all had a lot of the people in the past had more imagination. Their creative process was a lot more, there was a lot more equilibrium between imagination and knowledge. That's the difference I'm making. I'm reminding you again, I think that our room to be imaginative is much more limited. Not because we are midwits. I'm sure you have a 140 IQ. You know, maybe I don't, but I'm sure you do. Huh?
147.
That's amazing. But you are technology, because the technology involves, you are just more limited in your ability to be imaginative than a guy of the past who had a strict Overton window did. You talk about the importance of Overton windows all the time. This should make intuitive sense to you. You know what I mean? He had a certain set of boundaries that he could play around in. The rest of imagination needed to fill in. That's true. I am more informed than Nietzsche. I am way more knowledgeable than Nietzsche is. He's way more imaginative than I am. And maybe because I'm more knowledgeable than he was more imaginative than I am for that very reason, because I have too much influence. I have too many things bombarding me. He doesn't have empathy. He can kind of think in solitude. Can you think in solitude? No, you can't. Can I think in solitude? No, I can't. Because I'm 5 minutes away from, let me check my Instagram. Let me check. We're all addicted to this.
So suppose, I would say I am 100%.
We are.
At the same
time. So
how
can we have internal solitude? We can't. It's a technological problem, man.
Sure. Do people exist without phone addictions?
Yes.
Yeah.
They do.
So it's a habitual issue.
Here's the thing. Now we're getting into the field of territory where it's like, actually not all. Yes, some people don't have phone addiction.
That's not the point I'm making.
They don't. But the point, can you refute what I just said? Can you refute what I just said?
Why would I refute? I don't disagree with this. No, but
so then what are you disagreeing with?
No, my point is simple. There's the doomer outlook, which is that
I'm not a doomer.
It's for me in my interpretation, it's a doomer outlook.
It's not doomer at all.
I'll tell you why I think it's a doomer outlook.
Why do you think it's a doomer outlook?
It's a doomer outlook because it's saying that there's 100 things coming at me. I can't. I'm drowning in them, and I'm curating. I have no room for originality.
Yeah.
As opposed to, in my opinion, is the hope core outlook, which is that there's 100 things coming at me. I'll give what time I duly can,
Yeah.
right? And then, out of this very large curative Overton window that I have,
Yeah.
I will retreat into myself and do the best, most original output that I possible.
Okay, that's great. I hope that works out for you. I just think on the material level, it's kind of difficult because the second you want some solitude, you're like, I'm going to do a phone detox a day, maybe you do it. It's kind of tough, you know? And I'm not doomer at all about it. Literally, I said it earlier that I think what is going to happen is that the antithesis to the dialectic will get stronger and stronger, and we will create new forms of art. Music, literature, art, architecture don't have to be the only forms of art. We'll find a new form of art. I'm not doomer at all. I'm saying with the current level of things we have, the current level of technology we have, I don't think we can innovate anymore. I think there has to be there needs to be a new game altogether, because this current game is an infinite number of iterations have already been created and
Final
keep getting
question.
created. Yeah.
Final question.
It's a game of chess.
About the way forward.
Yeah.
Because we're now facing this massive disruption of our creativity by technology.
Yeah.
But it's something in different gradations we both agree with.
Yeah.
The technology problem seems to only be getting worse as we approach AGI, who knows in a few years, super intelligence.
Yeah.
So, while on a social level, I do agree that the antithesis is building.
Yeah.
There's this welling up of people being like, dude, I don't want this law forced on me anymore. Right? Practically, do you think we ever get out of it? And if we do, how?
Very, very simple, my brother.
Herbert Maxey.
Apathy.
Herbert
Plug out. Yes, plug out. The thing I said from the beginning, there's no collective action that you can take. You can't fight against it. It's just too powerful. The only thing you can do is like, I'm disconnected.
And do you think it'll
that if you wanna actively rebel against it, there are two ways forward. If you wanna rebel, that's the method of rebellion that is actually effective. And because then it hurts the financial pockets of the force. If people tap out, if people say no mas, no more, I don't want it anymore.
Do you think it ever gets to the? It probably does, but when do you think it gets to the point that it's so brain frying, it's so oppressive and so constant that it's not just the chuds who are like, we need to get this the fuck out of our lives. They're on a mass level. It is actually everyone who's like, the way, for example, blue and red America were split over the vaccine.
Yeah.
Where one was like aligning themselves with the machine and the other was rejecting it wholesale. Not like getting into the merits of that, but just as a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Do you think we reach a point where half of the mainstream is like, I need AGI, it's what keeps me plugged in and prosperous in this world, and the other half is like, this is not just destroying my art and my soul, this is just completely frying my brain, this is the fucking Antichrist. Yeah, and then it splits and half the world hermit maxes and half the world super intelligence maxes.
Yes, and then as per divine scripture, a force will come to create the synthesis.
Yeah.
It's the most hardcore thing if you really think about it, because I'm not advocating for some futile, stupid resistance that has no chance of winning. I'm saying hermit max until the day comes, wait for the synthesis to arrive. It will arrive eventually. That's history. That's the Hegelian dialectic. That's Ibn Khaldun. That's your Oswald Spengler. All of them have said this. That is your divine scriptures who have said this. You wait.
And
it is the dialectic.
The most uncannily beautiful part of it is actually not only do all the positive, generative, religious scriptures talk about this.
Yeah.
Not only do, traditionally inspired philosophers talk about it, even the evil, even the opposing side. If you want to get specific, like even at the end
you have to cut it out too much.
Deterritorialization.
Yeah, just allude to it. You have to censor it anyways.
Yeah, and even at the end of deterritorialization is the same ending, right? Yeah. At the end of Nick Land or Peter Thiel nowadays warning about. So we all agree there's going to be something in the end. There's just a disagreement about if there's two archetypal figures in the final face-off, which side are we going to do?
It's gonna happen. There will be hyperstition. These ideas make your own reality. This is the greatest. It is the greatest instance of hyperstition ever in human history. Is that this particular antichrist will come and his, uh, or the hero will come. It's Derek.
And dude, it's like I always, when I used to read about all the end of time stuff,
Yeah.
I always used to notice that, 200 years ago, they also thought the same thing. 300 years ago, they thought it was going to happen. But it cyclically kept going up and down, but it never happened. I genuinely think like the break in the matrix is the AI stuff.
Who knows? Let's see. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it is. Maybe it's just too financially untenable to continue, and maybe it's a fad. A lot of people talk about the AI bubble. We don't know. We really have no idea. In the meanwhile, if it's bad, plug out. Don't resist. Bad is too powerful. Bad will win. Bad beats good every time. Until the end.
Until the end.